Hello, everybody. Welcome to Drunk with Questions, the talk show where ordinary people talk about extraordinary topics. With me today is the only guy I've run next to without his pants on, Raj. How you doing today?
What the fuck, dude?
Oh
Oh
man.
no, man. What the hell? Okay, yeah. So that definitely did happen.
Yep. Tell the people.
So this was, my God, this would have been back in when we were in high school.
I
I
believe
think,
so. Yep.
yeah, I think we were in high school and we were trying to get in shape for football,
Mhm.
and we decided that we were going to go take a run through the the
Woods.
nature preserve. Unfortunately, our pants got covered with these little balls from these plants, the
With
spike
burrs.
balls. Yeah, burrs. That's what it's called. And oh my god, they hurt so much. And yeah, at that point, we decided, you know what, we're just gonna run with our pants off and just underwear on in the middle of a public nature preserve. And we definitely ran past some girls
Oh yeah.
on our trip.
And
And
our man bits were falling out too, I think,
oh
if
my
I
god, yeah,
remember
because at that
correctly.
time we were still wearing boxers on
Yeah, that was
briefs. We didn't
boxer
have the
time.
snug. Yeah, it wasn't brief time. We didn't have any
Man,
snugs.
bro, that was dangerous. We could have gotten so much trouble. But yeah, we decided to go off-roading and ended up in Burrs and yeah, so we were
We technically ran the entire trail. We just didn't want to because it was that or getting arrested for sexual assault for some reason. Like that was our option. So we didn't even stop to like try to explain it to the people that we were passing by. We were just imagine you're in the woods going for a hike with your family, and a small Indian man comes running out with his pants off, and a big old white dude comes running after him with his pants off. So that's basically the situation that
I
these
never thought of it that way. It looks kind of freaky.
looks really bad.
Dude.
Oh my god, dude. Yeah, so that's happened. So I'm happy you guys got to hear that story. Another embarrassing moment brought to you by Raj and Gooch.
Da-da-da. Well, today on the table, cryptids.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the spooky stuff that's watching you from the outside, the stuff that's
Right
watching
from
you
the
from the windows.
bushes.
This man right here, he's watching you.
For everyone that doesn't see, Raj has Mothman behind him, and I have Nessie. And we got Spicer here with us too today, and he has nothing because he's lame.
Oh, well, I'm sorry for not having the picture prepared. And also, just for the viewers, if your neighbor looks you through the window, they are not a cryptid. They are a creeper.
A different classification of animal.
That's a pretty good, yeah, distinguishing factor of that. um, so yeah, I guess the first thing I'd like to say to everybody is, yes, we heard the breathing in the last episode, and we are attempting to fix it right now. So, uh, hopefully, this will make it better. Also, I love cryptids. I used to watch the Discovery Channel, History Channel, whatever channel it was on. Um, and they would always have like hunting Bigfoot or whatever, right? And I believe, oh, it may have been on the Sci-Fi Channel or something, but there was some sort of a show where they actually did like 30-minute segments on a bunch of cryptids, and I would watch the crap out of that too. And surprisingly, cryptozoology, because they would explain that in those shows, was what got me into taking zoology classes in college. So instead of
So it was
zoology now,
Sasquatch that got you into
it
fisheries and wildlife.
it really was. And
Mm.
yeah, then I ended up switching to fisheries and wildlife afterwards. But yeah, I would say as a young kid in my middle school years, that was probably something that really got me into zoology and things like that. Because originally I wanted to be an ecologist. Then I watched those shows and I'm like, I'm gonna be a zoologist. I know what I'm doing in my life.
I feel like everybody can relate to that, right? So no matter what part of the world you live in, you're gonna come across these legends and these animals that kind of blow your understanding of what is possible in the world, and everybody's gonna have it. I mean, it seems the United States has more than the rest of the world, but we're just kind of a bunch of kooks here, so we have too much free time to think about this stuff. But
We
no matter
really do
what
have
part
a
of the
lot of free
world,
time.
absolutely, like no matter what part of the world you go to, you're gonna run into somebody that talks about cryptids. We all have weebs in our friend groups, and it's gonna be something that everybody talks about, and we want to spend it today just talking about some of our favorite cryptids. And none of this is an endorsement of whether or not these cryptids are real or not, but this is just our understanding as far as we've come in terms of researching, quote unquote, researching these creatures. And
I think some of them are real, and we'll get to that later. But
yeah,
I
I'll
think
state my
this journey is
position.
a mental petting zoo of mythology.
Pretty much. I'm gonna state right now, I don't believe any of these are real, and I'm really creeped out by the fact that you called it a mental petting zoo. I don't really like that. It makes me feel weird.
I can't confirm that they're real,
it's
so I mean, I don't know where we can get an actual petting zoo for some of these.
it's like those dreams you have, Raj, of laying in a matted fur of a Squatch man,
Oh,
aka
doesn't
me.
yeah, it doesn't sound too bad. I feel like I've done that before.
That checks out.
Well, guys, I want to start off with, I guess, the biggest one, right? So I think everybody in the world has heard of Sasquatch. That's always the number one go-to when it comes to cryptid. Do we believe Sasquatch can exist? And if so, why have we not been able to find him?
Okay, so I'm in the ring of it's 50-50 for me still. The reason why is because although yes, it's a very large animal and no one's really gotten good pictures of it, hunters haven't seen it, and that is what do I want to say? Like really against it. We know that there were humanoid apes that didn't take the path of becoming Homo sapiens, right? Especially in the past. And uh, I'm just not sure why it's so unbelievable that a large primate could exist yet have enough intelligence to avoid human interaction.
I don't think it's the fact that they're unable to avoid it, but here's the thing. I mean, humans are intelligent creatures, but you can still be caught on a hunter's trap camera. Like, you're expecting this thing to know every single thing that we can throw at it. For the history of people that have been hunting on this land, there hasn't been any sightings that are credible. The ones that have been found have been proven to be fraudulent. So it's like it's hard for me to believe, because here's the thing, no matter how big the territory is, at the the 200 years since this country was created, somebody would have come across this thing. And in the time that we've had cameras, everybody's walking around with an HD camera in their back pocket. Somebody would have found some pictures of this thing.
Now, Native Americans had Sasquatch in their lore too, though. And uh, some of them believe that it's an actual thing as well. So, with that, that means it technically precedes colonialism, I guess would be the proper term. Um,
I mean, we've looked at the history books and the evolution of animals that have been in this area, and we found that there are animals that could have been. One of the biggest, the most credible theories is the giant sloth that used to exist in North America. That's like the
right.
most credible.
Yep.
It's not an ape-based animal. It's just it's a big, it looks like a big bear that can walk, that's bipedal at sometimes, usually when it's foraging for food up on higher branches. But I mean, even bears, people have seen bears walk on 2 feet for short distances. They can do it. So
That's true.
like, so there's no way for us to be like, oh yeah, that's a Sasquatch, and not, oh, I just saw something furry walking on 2 legs. Could be a bear.
I think uh, my my argument still stays with the higher intelligence than we're giving this creature credit for. So even though it is an animal, right? And if I say primate, you're immediately going to go to like chimpanzee, gorilla, everything like that. I'm talking about an animal that has probably the intelligence of like a Neanderthal. And um, with that, it would also have its animalistic senses, right? So it would have better smell than us, um, maybe better sight. Question mark. It's technically a predator, so could. And with those, although again, I will admit, never being caught on a trail cam or anything like that, it's pretty hard to believe. If the population is small enough, it would be difficult for it to just coincidentally occur. Some of my biggest things are the okapi, right? So the okapi wasn't discovered for almost 40 years after um, Western scientists heard about it. And then also, there's this really big, it's basically a praying mantis that everyone thought was extinct up until about 3 years ago. And they actually found these bugs on an island off the coast of New Zealand hanging off the cliffside. And I mean, they're big. They're not like a bug. They're like the size of your hand bug.
I mean, but we're still talking about something that's supposed to be like 10 feet tall compared to a bug, right? So
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. I believe in terms of population, once a population reaches a threshold, there's no going back, correct? There's a threshold point where population becomes so small for it to effectively reproduce, especially over long distances.
Yeah, so if Bigfoot is as widespread as people uh, seem to want to make it out to be, like from literally Canada, some sightings in Alaska, all the way to Florida and everything, it'd be pretty difficult for me to say that that would be a sustainable population. Um, the only way that that would work is if they had family groups, right? And they were extremely incestuous with those, which is also a possibility. I mean, it's an animal, right? So,
We're talking about incestual Sasquatch.
well, I mean, that's the wrong word. A lot of inbreeding, I guess, because they're animals.
Sasquatch
But
has to smash, yes.
yeah, so that would really be the only way is if they had family groups that stayed within a relatively close distance to each other, but they had their own roaming areas like wolves, right? So like wolves stay in their pack, but they roam large areas as the pack. And if another pack comes onto that area, kind of they get into fights and stuff. So
So why haven't we found any carcasses? Because assuming, I mean, these are living creatures, so at some point they die, and when they die, I mean, unless you're human, most animals don't bury their dead. People don't dispose of remains, so
So that
why
goes
wouldn't we
back to
found
my
one?
my intelligence, though, right? So elephants have been shown to mourn their dead, and to move bones around to specific areas. And I mean, I'd be hard pressed to say that an elephant has a higher intelligence than a gorilla, personally. So, if this animal did have a higher intelligence than those two animals, and they're somewhere between like well, I'm not sure which primate is the smartest, if I'm being honest. But if it was somewhere between a gorilla or a chimpanzee, an elephant, and us, then it wouldn't be too far out of the realm of possibility that they would do something with the bodies, whether it be bury them or dispose of them in a particular area. Uh, that again, though, why wouldn't we find like this mass grave of Sasquatch skellies? um, we could go into the whole like the disappearances in the U.S. and the cave systems map. um,
Is this your freaking under Earth theory or hollow
I'll
Earth
I'll
theory?
wait till we get to like the Wendigo and stuff to really dive into that. But for people that don't know, just so if I bring it up later, I've explained it. There is a map that shows hotspots for human disappearances in the United States. And if you overlay those hotspots with a map of the estimated and discovered cave systems in the U.S. They overlap pretty aggressively. Like, it's really creepy how close these are. Now, does that mean people could just be falling down mine shafts because that happens all the time? Yeah, could be. Or maybe it's more.
Maybe it's the Squatch getting hungry.
Dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun.
So we talked about Sasquatch, and what do you think, Spicy? Do you think that they exist? And if so, what do you think are the reasons why we can't find them?
So I've gone back and forth on this one over the years. My leaning currently is no, they don't exist. Um,
Oh man.
so ultimately, I mean, I've thought through all of the things we've talked about of whether it be cave systems or just unexplored areas of like the American wilderness. And actually, it's funny that Gooch mentions the overlay of if you look at that cave system with the like national parks in the United States, that there's a very strong correlation with the major cave systems and those parks. And of course, I mean, if our viewers haven't heard about it before, there's the conspiracy theory that Teddy Roosevelt set up the National Park Service to basically protect Bigfoot, other cryptids, things that people aren't quote ready to see or ready to know about,
Oh yeah,
or
because
just
that's a total myth. The government's never lied to us before, right,
This is
guys?
not
Ever.
tinfoiled hats to the tinfoiling. Okay.
you gotta put on at least like a somewhat aluminum hat for this one. But yeah, so in general, the Bigfoot, I've seen the grainy footage like everybody else. The shows that have been on TV of everybody dedicating all this time to it. Um, I suppose nothing is out of the realm of possibility. I guess there is a possibility that something could be so, intellectually advanced as to be able to be on par with humans in the sense that it can evade them. Not on par with humans, like you can't probably process complex thought. But I also have a hard time believing with as many people that go hiking and exploring in the remote areas of the US that have been searching for it and seeing these things for years. You see these videos, they're always far away, grainy, even modern videos. There's been no clear shot of anything on anything high definition to even determine it. Which, with today's modern technology, is the hardest part for me to believe that of all these people that are constantly looking for it, and the ones that do come out in more recent history, that they're basically the quality of video footage or pictures from the 90s. Like, you can't tell me that somebody didn't have an iPhone set up on that one now and couldn't take a solid, screenshot of this thing and zoom in and enhance it to be definitive. And so to me, when I think through it logically at that point, the more likely stance that I take on it at this point that it's a hoax, it's people continuing the traditions alive, if you will, of people enjoying the myths about Sasquatch, wanting to explore kind of that, you know, if we find it or if it was real, if we find it, there's no fun in the hunt anymore. So everybody gets such a thrill. And realistically, there is a booming business on Sasquatch hunting. There are people that make tons of money on like hosting these outings to go searching in the deep woods of some of the Appalachian areas and everything like that for it. And just in general on the
Souvenirs
touristy
too. Yeah.
attraction of it. Like Sasquatch tourism's big business in some parts of the US.
That's my biggest thing with Sasquatch is it seems to be a massive tourist thing, because anywhere that you claim that a Sasquatch has been or you've seen, you're going to get an inflood of these dudes walking in, using up all your hotel space, bringing in revenue. Like, there's areas that are like Sasquatch designed. Like, they have Sasquatch motel, Sasquatch sized food, shirts, everything. Like, it seems more of a marketing scheme. Like, I don't really understand why people think that this is not like an unexplored area that these guys are exploring. These are woods that they have to wear orange because hunters also go into these woods. So like, this is not a place that people haven't gone to. People haven't spent a lot of time in. You talk about people that spend time in in the woods, it's hunters. And they generally spend their time early morning when nobody else is out, or getting later into the night when nobody else is out. So that would be like the prime time to see an animal, would be early morning or as it gets closer to dark. And if they haven't seen it, and these weirdos with their cameras and their weird Sasquatch mating calls haven't seen them, I don't really know why we think they exist. They're like, have you heard those guys? Like, just going, imagine you live in the woods. You
Yeah.
just bought a land, you just bought property. You're like, okay, it's peaceful here. I built a cabin here. Everything's good. But every night you have to hear some dude just full belting, just in your fucking backyard, wondering what the fuck is happening.
Oh, fuck.
I'm actually surprised there aren't more homicides related to Sasquatch hunting.
My favorite is they'll take the piece of branch or whatever and they'll thump it against a tree.
Yeah, because that's a solid advice right there.
You know, after the whole Jack Link's beef jerky, how they had the Sasquatch as the mascot, people started leaving beef jerky and fucking Bud Light out for Sasquatch. That was a thing. They
Hey,
thought this ape
don't
needed
you
beef
knock
jerky.
that, because that probably saved a bunch of desperate drunk hikers.
That'd be a fun find though. Imagine you're just dying of you're waiting for somebody to come save you and just come across a pile of beef jerky.
Oh,
and
you're
a
like, huh?
beer.
It's a
You're
sealed
like,
thing
I'm
of
good.
Jack Links and Bud Light.
Yeah, it's like, I'm good. I can wait a couple more days. No big deal.
I mean, the Bud Light's gonna be worthless because it's skunked up from being in the sun.
Listen, I'm
can't
not
make
trying to be
Bud Light
picky.
worse.
I mean, if you're out in the Appalachians, I suppose beggars can't be choosers.
Bud Light is basically the water that's under those like industrial sized dumpsters in the city. Like that's what Bud Light is. It's basically just beer. It's like water that washed through whatever they made the beer in, and then they turn that into a beer. That's what.
Oh
Bud
yeah,
Light is.
dude.
Oh, well, that's fair.
Solid.
Yeah,
All right.
based on Bud Light, yeah, that's probably pretty accurate.
All right, let's talk about one that I am like 90% sure is real, the Wendigo.
So you
Explain
lost
why
me.
you think it's 100% real.
Bro, just go to Wendigo TikTok, man.
Wendigo TikTok.
I'm not joking. Some of these videos, man.
Yeah,
my-
but that's just easily.
Yeah, but I mean,
too.
yeah, you can easily fake that with like audio.
No,
files,
you can't
man.
do that because you were like, oh, well, these pictures that they have of Bigfoot, they're all grainy and shot. And then if you actually had a good one, like I'm talking about right now, well, it's fake. It's fake. So, like,
Isn't it?
that's the problem with cryptids, man. Like, that's what
The
happens.
thing is,
but
has
the
anybody gotten a
medium-
picture of the Wendigo?
Here's the thing, the medium in which that you find the information makes a difference. If you find something on a reputable website, a scientific website that shows a picture of something, then you can see like, okay, that makes sense. If you get it on TikTok, that's as equivalent of you getting information on the Onion.
So you're gonna go out there and get some of that Wendigo and show them.
No. Oh God, the Wendigo. Oh,
So here's where I fall on the Wendigo whole thing. So I mean, Wendigos, everybody thinks of it now in the popular mediums that we have. Wendigos of being these tall, like beast-like beings with like a deer head skull on their head. Like that's the common depiction of Wendigo in the popular culture, but that's been largely stylized. That's not the actual depiction. And then when you actually look up the origins of Wendigo, honestly, that depiction is kind of close to what they did picture in a game like The Witcher 3, where it's called a Leshen, like a nature spirit. Excuse me. So basically, Wendigos a lot of times have more of like a Native American origin, back to their beginnings, and depending on where you find the origin story, it either is like a body possessing spirit or a werewolf type of like disease or affliction, where it causes someone to eat human flesh.
It's
and
a
then basically
shapeshifter.
they become violent, ravenous, cannibalism. You know, it's an emaciated body, but they're also described as a lot of times having like a hairy, tall structure, like a primate, almost like Sasquatch. And so
let's dissect the story of the Wendigo, right? So the Wendigo
right.
is a Native American mythology, a mythic creature in Native American mythology, which basically is a person that has experienced, say, over a harsh winter, they experience starvation, and they resorted to cannibalism. And those who resort to cannibalism will then get taken over by the spirit, which will keep you forever hungry but never satisfied. So you keep
Right.
eating, but you'll never be satisfied.
Yeah,
Now,
it's the
Basically,
ravenous
Kuru.
hunger.
yeah, it's basically kuru, which is a disease that happens after you eat either close mammalian family. So you could be talking about if you eat like cow brain, deer brain, any of like the close mammals, four-legged mammals. If you start eating brain, then there are certain I believe there are certain molecules inside the brains that our body just can't handle and it can't metabolize, and it creates a terrible what do I want to call it? Terrible side effects, which includes jitteriness, loss of cognitive thought. Almost looks like people that have like Parkinson's. They're always shaking. They're always jittery. Now, as an early society, why would they create a story about a creature that would take you over, leave you hungry forever, and never be satisfied? Well, that sounds worse than death. So the whole idea is these Native Americans did not live in a time where they had central air and heating. So it was very likely that if they didn't farm enough or gather enough the season before, winter could kill a few of them. They did not want their people resorting to cannibalism, so they created the story of the Wendigo, which keeps people in check. And I think even in like the 1800s, during like the Wild West, there was like Native American Wendigo hunters. There was a famous story of a guy who killed a woman and her kid out west because he said that they were Wendigos, and of course he got charged with murder, and I'm pretty sure he was hung. But there's still belief in
Makes
this to the
sense.
extreme, but it's not like this one is so far off the end. It's like it can be explained by the thought process of somebody that lived at that time and lived in those conditions. It doesn't need to be an actual creature for it to be terrifying for people.
Well, and like many stories from back then, I mean, you're running into was the story created to help, like you said, increase like crop production and other things to help the tribe survive? Are they created to scare children and kind of explain certain areas of like, don't go here, blah blah blah. The witch lives in the woods. Those kinds of interactions and stories of why they're developed. And ultimately too, so cryptozoology and everything to me has it skirts a very, very fine, almost non-existent line with mythological creatures, in the sense that some people consider cryptids to be more of like a regional legend, whereas others consider like other mythological creatures that are mentioned as cryptids. I mean, you go on like the wiki for cryptids and all that, you're looking at things like almost like a demi like deity from these other cultures slash like say like a sphinx. It's a mythical creature, but some consider it a cryptid that exists or existed. um and so with like the Wendigo, if we lean into more the mythology side of an explanation, a lot of myths are created to explain natural phenomenon, because they don't understand it at the time. So maybe there were people that did cannibalize and end up suffering from Kuru, and then they're like, oh well, it's got to be a Wendigo.
So I'm gonna go a little bit into the whole of Wendigos. So this shit, man, I'm telling you, this has got to be real. I don't know how it's not. So Wendigos can be shapeshifters, right? So one of the biggest things is they call them not deer, and what they'll do is they'll shapeshift into animals that can mask their presence, basically, or they can blend into things. And although I know deer can suffer from quite a few diseases like EHD, epizootic hemorrhagic disease, which makes them act very strange. These aren't things that would make them look
Is
strange.
that the one? Is that the one that makes them go in circles over and over
Yes.
again?
Yes. So, like, that's acting strange, but there aren't things that would make them look strange. And sometimes you can see these pictures of animals and they just don't look right, man. Like, they don't look right. And that's weird. There's not a lot of things that just make animals look weird in the wild and have them like survive to an adulthood. On top of that, not only is the is it a shapeshifter, but it's also a master of mimicry. So what it'll do is it'll shapeshift into a form that might be familiar to you. So one of the ways it'll lure its prey, which might be humans, is it'll shapeshift into like a humanoid figure. It's not a great shapeshift. And what you'll see is they'll like stand out in the middle of the woods or something, and they'll be like, hello, hey. And that's like the easiest thing that they can say. And then if like you try to talk to them, they can't really talk back. Like they can mimic, but they can't mimic very well. So you may be like, hey, what's your name? It'll be like, oh, and you're like, what the fuck?
You're telling me that you would not run the other fucking way if you heard that in the woods.
So there's like, I would, don't get me wrong. But it makes sense, right? So if you're trying to lure something in and there's somebody out in the woods by themselves or whatever, and they think someone needs help, they're going to go try to help them, right? Like a lot of the times. But if that happened, I'd be like, nope, bye, see ya next week, forever. Also, on top of all of that, one of the scariest thing about the Wendigo is the closer it is to you, the further away it sounds.
Explain how that works.
So,
Magic.
if you're trying to lure something to you, right, and it begins walking towards you, if that thing knows that it's getting closer to you, it's going to become more on edge, right? But if it thinks it's getting further away from you, it might like be like, okay, I can get closer, right? So it's a hunting strategy.
So let me ask you a question regarding the food. The Wendigo isn't specifically looking for humans. It
Not
doesn't
always.
specifically not looking for humans. It has deer. It can eat all kinds of other stuff.
Right.
Why is the deer population on the rise?
Well, it's not like there's 40 million Wendigos out there. Deer populate like rabbits, basically.
Yeah, but they're ravenous, right? So we would be seeing hunters would be seeing carcasses of deer strewn about everywhere.
I mean, sometimes I see deer carcasses that have decomposed, and I don't know if it was shot in the past. I mean, I guess if I really broke down into it, I could figure out if it got eaten by another animal or if it was shot by a hunter and they didn't recover it or whatever. But I mean, I don't personally do that. I'm sure there's people that do for their job. But also, if it was a Wendigo, um, there's really no known facts about its dentition, its teeth, right? So it might have teeth very similar to like a coyote or something like that that you could just chalk up and be like, oh yeah, it's just coyote. I mean, we're not trying to solve a human murder here. It's a deer. It's a dead deer. So
I'm not gonna lie. I don't really think Sasquatch is real, and I could 100% buy into Sasquatch more than I could a Wendigo.
Yeah, I'm in that boat there. Because here, the thing about the Wendigo is we have an explanation for its creation, why they would put that into the mythology of the people that lived at that time. And at the same time, if we have animals that are so voracious that they can never stop eating, and there's a plethora of deer available for them to eat, we would be finding deer carcasses wholesale. Entire forests would be empty of deer. And here's the thing: the deer would then move towards human civilization, and then there'd be more contact with humans with these Wendigos.
To me, I mean, I guess the Wendigo, while it's classified by most people as a cryptid, falls more into like the mythological realm of like the oral traditions of Native Americans that kind of evolved into being more of a creature type that people are saying as a cryptid. It started as more of a almost like a spiritual possession type deal in their
Yeah,
culture.
we're talking more like
Um,
demons possessing bodies at this point, like with the way it
so
sounds.
the way the Native Americans would consider a Wendigo is kind of like what the Japanese culture would consider a kami. Where
well, where's the kami?
Not that kind of kami.
That was the last episode. God damn it.
But yeah, so like a kami in not Native American, but Japanese culture is a type of spirit, whether it be a nature spirit, that kind of thing. They have a whole differentiation in like
Did you
Shintoism
just say
and
it's a
Japanese.
dim-witted spirit?
No.
Oh, sorry. I thought for sure you said it's a dim-witted spirit. And I was like,
No.
what the hell does that mean?
No.
Smartest of
I'm
the
a
group.
ghost. I'm here to help you.
Yeah, that is definitely not the main category of a kami. But so like in their culture, it would be more of the at least from my understanding, and I could be wrong, and one of our viewers can feel free to reach out and correct me if I'm wrong. So there's a distinction between like kamis and yokai in the Japanese culture. And so yokai would be like their type of cryptids, like they are monsters typically, or a type of spirit that takes like a monstrous form that people can actually see. And then a kami is a spirit that would either take possession of an object or like a nature spirit that would be just
like a vase.
kind of floating around. Like a what?
Like a vase?
Yes, actually.
Or
So
candelabra?
there is actually a concept
in
haunted broom.
In their culture. Actually, there's something called a tsukumogami, and what a tsukumogami is essentially a normal object that over time has been around people and absorbed like the emotions and everything from the people around it, to the point that it eventually develops sentience into like a spirit or a kami. And so that normal mundane object gains sentience and becomes what's known as a tsukumogami.
So what point do they start singing? Be our guest. Be
I'm
our
pretty
guest.
sure it's.
Oh my
it's,
god!
I was gonna
just blew
say.
my mind.
I'm pretty sure it's. I'm pretty sure it's
movie.
after the lunch rush they'll start singing.
Oh my god, dude! They were all just fucking poltergeist.
Oh god.
Poltergeist.
The plural form.
They're just possessed. Oh.
So yeah. Long and short of it, I think the Wendigo's BS, man.
I would agree 100%.
Oh man, it's real. I'm telling you. Watch, everyone that's listening. I know I'm going to get to at least 60 people here. Frickin' Wendigo TikTok. Prove me wrong, man. People are hearing things talking to them. People are seeing things that are freaky deaky. All right. Like, I'm telling you, oh man. And I think it's more of a Southern thing, honestly. Like, it seems to be more of like in the South, warmer climates, not very much of a Northern thing, but
well, and definitely there is. So actually, there is a tradition and a superstition in the Appalachians. So in Appalachia, there's like a superstition. I don't know if it's distinctly related to a Wendigo, but essentially they're like, if you hear something or someone call your name when you're out in the woods, you don't answer.
That's a Wendigo. See, man, I'm telling you, bro.
Well,
why would you come up with that? Why would you come up with that?
There are other things though that kind of fall into that category of the same superstition.
Why would you have that rule as a region? Because no one ever told me that rule when I was a kid, right?
I mean, if you're out in the middle of the woods in Appalachia, I mean, somebody calls your name, say it's the creepy guy down the road that's trying to abduct your child, and then, kill him and eat him or something like that.
I mean, it's a general good rule not to answer random darkness that's calling your name.
I don't know.
But if I'm in the middle of the woods and a voice says my name,
what if there's another Mike down the road?
Maybe it's just like the Appalachian version of stranger danger.
They call my name, then we got problems. Because there's no fucking way. There's nobody else out there with my name.
Why, Raj? Because they had to Google Translate it or something?
Dude, I'd respond to it in my mother tongue to see if it would mimic that.
Oh, man.
Raj is just sitting there in the woods like, gotcha.
Something in the woods is speaking Malayalam to me, Mike. I'm scared.
Then I believe you 100%. There's no way. First of all, I found a fucking brown person doing the Appalachian Trail. There's no way. That's already an impossibility. And then we have somebody speaking my tongue back to me in the woods. Okay, at that point, I'm pulling out my pistol and I'm just running.
Well, the thing is too, like, kind of where I fall on the Sasquatch topic of like, I think the video footage and everything is hoaxed. It's not of the quality that sticks with normal like video footage today. It's always far away. It's always of the back of them walking away. It's never them walking toward them. It could easily be a guy in a suit, and there's big business, like I said, tourism, all this kind of stuff. People love their legends, people love their superstitions. Wendigo TikTok could easily be audio files of people putting that stuff on there for entertainment value.
You're an audiophile.
I might be. An audiophile actually is a word for somebody that does partake in high quality audio.
Sure, absolutely.
But yeah, so but no, in general, yeah, I mean the whole not deer concept, I mean, easily explained in most cases by could be like a brain parasite in these deer, making them run in circles, like those videos we've seen online.
Can deer have mange?
Yeah, yeah, it is technically mange. They'll lose
so
a
like
lot of hair.
if you look at a mange deer, it'd be fucking terrifying in the middle of the night, right? It'll look like something that's
Yeah,
unnatural.
any animal without hair is freaky, man. You see the bears with mange and they have no hair?
Oh yeah.
Oh my
yeah.
god.
Yeah, first of all, that's terrifying.
Actually, coyotes with mange is what they're chalking chupacabra up to be.
Yes, I was actually going to bring that up too.
I was just going to bring that up.
Okay, so we've covered. Yeah, it's okay. Well, shut the fuck up. we talked about we talked about Sasquatch, Mr. Squatch, and we've talked about now your Wendigo. Let's talk about what do you bring into the table, Spicy?
What am I bringing to the table?
Yeah, bring it.
Okay, so I would have to say that probably one of my most interested, that one of the cryptids I've been the most interested in ever since I first started looking into all of these. Everybody's got their classics like Sasquatch, Loch Ness Monster, all these other things. For me, it's Thunderbirds.
That's another Native American one, isn't it?
Yeah, so it has its origins in Native American culture and myths. A lot of people at one point attributed it to being a condor, like a very large type of condor. Since a lot of them were found in like very rocky and cliff-faced areas. Yeah, so it's basically large bird-like animals. They live between like northern Canada and Alaska down to Central America. So it's all throughout North America, through Native American cultures is typically where you hear these legends coming from. Enormous eagle-type monsters, strong enough to carry whales back to their nest, and then pioneers began moving west. We go to the plains. Sightings of large birds have been reported.
Hold on, are these the eagles from Lord of the Rings? Are they real?
No, because these ones might have actually carried them to Mordor and turned that movie into a half hour.
Oh, okay. So they're not useless then. Okay.
How dare you speak of it in such a manner? But yeah, so the sightings of large birds, they've been reported across the country and throughout North America, civilizations around the world. So I'm on the cryptid wiki online, and so essentially the legend that it starts out with: tribes all across North America, especially along the Pacific coast and the Great Lakes area where we live, have stories depicting enormous birds of prey. Some of them say that the birds are so large and powerful when they flapped their wings, thunder was created, lightning flashed out of their eyes, water fell off their backs, creating rain. So naturally, this is a kind of a myth setup of natural phenomenon. They use them to explain the things that happen naturally, such as storms and other forms of weather. So the legend of Passamaquoddies, I believe is how you pronounce it, or at least as close as I'm going to get. It describes the quest of two Native Americans in search of the source of thunder high in the mountains. Other stories said that there was a thunderbird who battled an enormous killer whale, and when the two beasts fought, they destroyed much of the land, knocking down trees, causing destruction.
Get that fight on pay-per-view, please.
Yeah.
Please.
Although dangerous and powerful
beings. Fighting.
Oh yeah, man.
This is.
Oh yeah. And then, although the dangerous, powerful beings, thunderbirds, were seen as
Zapdos.
benevolent nature spirits.
This is
They
Zapdos versus Kyogre. That's what this fight
Oh,
is.
100%, yeah. And so they were seen as nature spirits. They sometimes assisted tribes in search for food during famine, and then igneous rocks known as thunderstones are the eggs of these creatures, according to some legends. So they're actually in 1977 in Lawndale, Illinois, was supposedly a Thunderbird attack. So the attack was reported by the attack of two unidentified birds on a young boy. It occurred July 25th, 1977. A 10-year-old Marlon Lowe was playing outside when he suddenly attacked by two large birds, one of which temporarily picked him up and carried him over 30 feet before Marlon's mother, Ruth Lowe, ran to her son's rescue, chasing the birds away and recovering her traumatized son. Reportedly, several eyewitnesses had seen the attack take place. The birds were described as having a white ring around their necks and 4.5-foot body, with each wing approximately 4 feet long and 6-inch hooked bill, 3 front claws and 1 back claw, and a large black body.
I
So, I
mean,
mean,
I hate to burst these people's bubble, but there's actually videos of large predatory birds attacking children.
correct.
It's a real thing. It happens.
So the way you just described it right now, a bird with a ring on its neck that's got a large
Yeah.
wingspan can carry, that's a condor.
Yeah, it's
There's
either a
literally, if
condor
you
or
look
a
at
type
if
of
you look,
vulture.
if you look at a picture of a condor, they have a ring around their neck that literally looks like little shoulders. If you
Right.
look up a picture of a condor, yeah, that's the first thing I noticed about it. It's a large bird. It's definitely capable of lifting things up if it needs to, especially a small child. If it can take a small dog away, it can carry a small child for a certain. It's not like they described it as picking it up, taking it up in the air, and then dropping it. They were basically just dragging it probably across the ground. And when a condor is, I think, the biggest bird in North America, if not the biggest bird in the world, correct?
I think the
Yeah,
California condor is the biggest in the U.S.
Yeah.
I thought it was the Indian.
In the
But
U.S.
In the U.S., the California.
oh, that's right. The Indian is not in the U.S.
It's
So I
the
mean,
Andean, not the Indian. Excuse me, sir.
wow, wow, okay. But yeah, so we then get to like
The
sightings
Indian
being
condor just
reported
does your
for.
taxes.
Oh my god. But yeah, so sightings of these large birds have been reported for many years, supposedly. Began as people began settling farther west in the U.S. and Canada. One of the most famous reports apparently came in 1890. Two Arizona cowboys claimed to have shot and killed a large bird. The weird part is it was described as having no feathers and it had the head similar of an alligator. The two men supposedly dragged the dead bird back to town after killing it. The report seems to suggest that the creature looked more like a pterodactyl or a dragon than any modern day bird. Today, the cryptozoologists usually refer to Thunderbird legends the same way that they do with flying cryptids, such as the Kangamato, the Rock, the Ropin, and even sometimes the Jersey Devil. They're often associated with modern day pterosaurs. Many of the encounters with the creatures are all described similarly. Quite often, they resemble pterosaurs, which are thought to be extinct for millions of years. I mean, in the wiki, it literally shows a picture of Argentavis, which is a giant prehistoric condor compared to a human. And I mean, when it's standing up, it's literally taller than a fully grown man. But then the explanations, these teratorns, these pterosaurs, they're not. Nothing's been found in modern day history that's bigger than either an albatross or an Andean condor.
Yeah, it's just not. Yeah, with the amount of people, the amount of things that we have in the sky, it would be almost impossible for us to not to notice a gigantic bird flying around, let alone something that's able to stand as tall as a human being standing up. I mean, there are birds that can do that, but they're largely terrestrial birds because the
Well,
size that you would have to maintain and the wingspan you would have to carry yourself.
yes. Well, and people suggest too that perhaps that some of the previous sightings in decades past, it could have been a type of condor or something in captivity that escaped that kind of led to some of these sightings. Who knows?
Well,
It's
could
kind
you
of similar.
imagine that like you're watching the sky, there's thunder all around, and there's a gigantic bird flying around
Yeah, you're
in
like,
the
oh,
sky.
it's
You're
got to
gonna
be
be like,
him.
Thunderbird. That's it.
Yep.
We're gonna put thunder and bird together, and that's what this creature is. Wonderful.
Time for scariness.
Yep. Not to be confused with Thunderbirds, the superhero team of like jet and spaceship fighters back in the day.
Thunder, thunder, thunder.
That's Thundercats.
That's
Yeah,
Thundercats, yes.
whatever.
Thunder, thunder.
Also,
thunder,
super
Thundercats.
solid. Love that show.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's kind of along the same vein at this point as like the Loch Ness monster or anything like that. Plesiosaurs is kind of the suspected thing there. You know, here it's some large type of condor or pterosaur, but nothing's really been found. So again, more of a mythological basis that's just kind of taken on a life of its own.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, right? Because once it, like when people see something happening in front of them, we can all say that people are the worst eyewitness for anything that
Yes.
happens. They'll just
You are
think of
not wrong.
we will think of anything that our brain can grasp onto to explain what's going on. And I mean that's a segue onto my favorite cryptid that we have on the North America right now, which is Mothman.
Oh, buddy.
Look at this baddie. Look at this absolute daddy of a monster.
Oh my.
So Mothman is a West Virginian folklet. So how this story came to be is in 1966, two young couples were driving out for a little pleasure drive. I can't go into
Definitely
detail.
pleasure.
Lots of pleasure happening. This is the 60s, bro. Who knows what they were doing?
Probably dope.
Probably dope, yes. But they were driving across, and all of a sudden, one of them looked out the window and noticed these giant red eyes glowing in the forest. And it was weird because the eyes were coming up from high up in the trees. All of a sudden, the shape starts following them. It expands its wings. They said it had like a 10-foot wingspan. It was flying across, and it was just following them. They would keep driving. They would stop for a second. They would see the eyes looking at them from the forest again. They would keep driving. And they then reported it to the police department, which then got picked up by news media. And that's pretty much taken off since then. So the Mothman has become a staple for West Virginia and the town that I think it was called Point Pleasant in West Virginia. They even have a Mothman statue there and Mothman memorabilia and stuff like that. But I just like the idea of a humanoid man with moth wings and red eyes. I just think that's fucking cool.
Mothman is pretty classic.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Mothman is hard for me to get behind, personally. Because to me, it sounds like a superhero. Really, it does.
So the people there don't necessarily look at him like a villain. They don't look at him like he's some kind of evil entity. For them, they're kind of, he's like a superhero. He's actually considered a warning for ill omen. Anytime he's sighted, something terrible happens in the town. Like a bridge collapsed the last time he was spotted, and they had like different other accidents that happened within the town when these guys spotted. So stuff to think about. I don't know. Like I said, it's just something that I found as a cool little story. Apparently at that time is also when Batman became really popular, and I think that had a lot to do with why Mothman became so popular.
That's probably part of it.
Like they think that one of the theories for him is that he's from another universe, and that he's traveling between, because the sightings are so far in between, they think that he's actually traveling from different universes. Now I don't, like I said, I don't
moth
believe
humans from a parallel dimension.
Yes.
I think he's an interdimensional being.
Like a fourth dimensional being, which is why he comes and like warns them when things are about to hit.
The only fourth dimensional being I know of is Deadpool.
Deadpool, yeah, because he just breaks that fourth dimension all the time, doesn't he?
The fourth wall.
Fourth wall.
Yeah,
okay.
and Mothman's become very popular. I mean, you drive through West Virginia, Mothman stuff all over the place, especially in certain areas. Most recently, one of games we started playing as a group here and there. Fallout 76, big old Mothman references in that one because it takes place in the hills of West Virginia. So,
Which would make sense because if it's a bad omen, bad things are happening.
Yeah, I don't necessarily believe this guy to be real. I kind of wish he was, but he's such a goofy character. You gotta love him. He's like a bad DC fucking superhero that never got
I
allowed.
absolutely do not wish that thing was real.
No, man, he seems friendly enough. Look at him.
Yeah, no, I don't
Would
think so.
Mothman have human insides or bug insides?
It's probably an exoskeleton, and then you squish it, and all this little green pus comes out.
Would he have started as a pupa and formed a chrysalis and turned into the beautiful moth that he is?
Sure, from the dimension that he came from, but he's a full-grown Mothman in this world.
Skip to the origin story.
Well, it's probably going to have to be created because I don't think that exists. The origin story. He's been seen all across the world. Apparently, he's seen in Moscow before the 1999 Russian apartment bombing. He was seen all over the world, just like weird occurrences here and there. But the first story of him originated in West Virginia, and that's where he started. Let's see here. What else you got for me, guys?
The Ninja.
The what?
No, we're not doing this.
Yes.
We're not doing this, Mike.
I just watched YouTube videos. It's real,
the ninja?
bro. Ninja. So it's actually Japanese folklore, and it started in 2002 when these people from a research vessel claimed that they saw a whale-like or porpoise-like creature that seemed to have humanoid legs swimming. And it literally looks like just like a blob with eyes and a like creepy smirking mouth. And there's actually video on YouTube of a like a deep dive underneath the Arctic ice. They were checking out some of these critters that live down there, and it's freaky looking, man. I don't think it's fake. I'm not saying it's what it is. It might be another animal, but it's creepy, bro.
So it's a bipedal whale, is what they're saying it is?
Pretty much, yeah. Like a bipedal whale with like a humanoid-ish kind of face, and I don't know.
Oh, that's a
Welcome to the cryptids.
Yeah, in the ice? What the fuck? How do you even explain something like that? Like, what would be the origin story for this creature?
Well, whales technically still have pelvic bones. So it would be a whale that never lost its hind legs.
After all this time.
Well, there's so much shit under Antarctica that we don't know, man. There's a whole continent under the Arctic ice that we don't even...
Yeah, but there's no reason for us to believe that the laws of evolution have changed at all in
why
those areas.
Why does that mean the laws of evolution changed? Whales retain their pelvis. Why is it so hard to believe that there might be a whale-like creature that just retained its hind legs?
And what does it eat in the Arctic?
Friendship.
I was gonna say, if it had its legs still, I mean, like with no fins, how would it maneuver around in the Arctic?
It's a fair question. It's cold.
That is a fair question.
The Ninja has been. It's like
I'm
Pluto.
not really
We're gonna
buying
toss
into the
that out.
Ninja.
Yeah, the Ninja is like Pluto. We're gonna go ahead and kick him out of the group. He's not welcome.
It
There's
literally
not enough.
reminds me of like the old timey videos back in the day where you had some dude in white tights that was dressed up as like the moon, just like dancing around on
Yes,
stage.
that's exactly what it looks like.
Honestly, the
Like
pictures of this thing, you might as well just go to frickin' just Windows Paint and just create something there. That's basically what this looks like.
now, Mike brings up a good point. Um, like there's a lot of stuff under the Arctic we don't know about. One of the big conspiracy theories, I don't know if we talked about it back on our conspiracy theory episode, is the idea of Arctic pyramids. Pyramid structures are something that they found on lidar scans underneath the Arctic. Possible like civilization under there. It's all conspiratorial. There's really no basis for it at this point, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean that's what
never
For all
this
we know,
is.
there's a pyramid down there, and that is where the predators come to hunt the
Yep,
xenomorphs.
that's
We're not doing this, guys.
Oh, we're doing this.
We're not doing this. We can't just start mixing film into these cryptids here. It's
We're
already on
literally
shaky
talking
ground.
about a moth dude who travels dimensions.
What
Alright, fair
about
enough.
what about the possibility of creatures that can live like in the mantle or the very lower crust of the earth, like tremor worms or something like that?
I
Not
think
that
we'd have
deep.
more. I think we'd have more sightings or issues popping up from it.
Yeah, I
I
feel like that's something that they would. Here's the thing: like you get that close to the core, like I can believe maybe in like the first portion of the crust, but like that deep into the core, anything in there is either going to
it
get
would
crushed by the
anything.
gravity pressure or it's just going to get boiled alive. So there's just
Yeah,
nothing.
anything organic just wouldn't be able to sustain itself, and I don't really have the belief that anything could have adapted a skin that would have been that tolerable without also cooking its internal organs.
Yeah, but here's something that could be living under the earth. The Mongolian death worm.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that
Cool, buddy.
yeah, this thing is first of all, badass fucking name, by the way.
Oh yeah,
Badass name.
killer.
Mongolian death worm. Oof. You don't need you don't need an explanation. Do you want the Mongolian death worm? No, I don't want the Mongolian death worm. I'm gonna stay away from that. So this thing is supposed to be about 2 feet long, has no head nor legs, and it's so poisonous that merely touching it is instant death. So it doesn't have to bite you or anything. You can just touch it and it's instant death. And it lives in the Gobi Desert. Now, the desert is an interesting place for me to find a cryptid because, unlike
Yes.
most other areas, a desert is not heavily traversed. Nobody wants to go through a desert. And even if they do, they generally stick to the same path because it's optimal. When you're crossing a desert to get to a place, you're finding the optimal route and you're sticking to it.
And deserts used to be tropical rainforests, so there might be a lot of underlying biomass underneath that sand, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, and I mean it's in the western and southern part of Gobi, and there's been tales spinned about this Mongolian death worm. I mean, like this is not some gigantic creature. I mean, 2 feet long is big, but it's not ridiculous. Like depending on the
Like your
oxygen level on
forearm.
Earth, yeah, depending on the oxygen level on Earth, like normal centipedes and millipedes could get to that size. So it just depends on what this thing sustains itself on. If it's only attacking, if it's feeding on whatever's in the ground, like an earthworm would, or if it's actually predate like a predatory animal that goes after animals that would go. Because in the desert, all these animals burrow. They go into the sand so that way they don't get cooked by the top layer. Because once you get past the top couple inches of sand, it's actually pretty cool underneath in the desert ground. But it also has to go deep enough where it can stay warm during the cold because the desert gets really cold at night too. So it's both extremes that it has to manage.
So the only argument I have for that is generally ground dwelling animals breed above ground. So there should be a season where these things would be breeding. An example would be the earthworm, right? So in the spring, earthworms hibernate if it freezes through the winter. And then after a certain amount of rainfall hits, they actually come up out of the ground and they're hermaphroditic. So they line their head ends up together, and the ring that's around a earthworm's head, you know, like the different ring skin, is the is where I believe like the eggs and stuff are, the ovaries are. So they'll line their eggs up, and then they'll transfer sperm, and uh, they'll just transfer sperm. Really, that's what they're doing.
Makes sense. Yeah,
It's
I mean,
very
I'd say
possible.
desert biomes, like I kind of agree in the sense that I feel like there'd be a higher likelihood, I suppose, of finding some type of subterranean creature that we don't know of, considering that most people aren't going up and digging up the Sahara.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, the thing about this stuff is, I mean, it could very well be like a there's poisonous snakes in the desert where you come across a poisonous snake and you're sitting on the desert ground and all of a sudden you get bit and you don't know where it came from. It'd be like, oh, it's a Mongolian death worm. It could just be
But
some
yeah,
type
there's
of
that
viper.
snake. There's that snake that like shakes its body and it hides all the
Yeah,
way under. Yeah.
under the only thing that sticks up is the head and those little horns that it has. And once it bites, it just goes back in and waits for you to die. Like that's basically what it does. So it very well could be that. And it's hard to tell what this is, but I mean it's a cool cryptid idea because I think of like the Lord of the Rings. Was it the Hobbit movies where they had those worms burrowing into to make the tunnel for the orcs to come out of? Those gigantic worms. Did you guys ever see that movie?
So I
Nope.
don't remember any worms with that.
Yeah, so they had actually in the Hobbit, they had these worms that they used to burrow the actual tunnel to get close to the mountain, so that way that the Urukai could actually come in.
Oh,
And like that's what I would like to think this stuff is, but like at most it's a 2 foot long
yeah.
little snake hiding
At
in the
most, it
desert.
is a giant gummy worm.
Um, I want to go back to the caves, man, and the national park system.
Secret tunnel.
So one of the theories is that the national park system was created to uh, protect cryptids, but there's also a theory that it's a race. It's literally a race of like humans or humanoid creatures that are established in those areas, and they keep people out of those areas in order for those humans to live their life. And they're basically just like feral humans, not Native Americans, nothing like that, but literally like feral humans. And that is frightening to think about because there's a lot of movies about like going into caves and there's cave people that'll take you, or going in the woods and there's like feral humanoid creatures that'll take you. And
Oh, the cave movies are crazy. Like the movie where those girls go into the cave and they come across these like humanoid creatures that have no eyes and evolve to have just hearing, and that's it. I mean, that's a normal step that you could see happening. Like a lot of animals that live in the deep caves and in like sunlight, no, with like no sunlight areas, generally don't have developed eyes,
mm-hmm.
or they've developed smaller, or like they just need to know when they see light, not really what's in there.
Yep.
So
Wasn't
they'll
that the
go in there.
descent?
That was The Descent, dude.
Yeah.
That was a good movie. That was a really good movie. It made me never want to go spelunking. Like
I just
once
kind of
again,
don't want to go spelunking anyway.
yeah, it's just like there's some crazy stuff you can see in there. But here's the thing: it's kind of the similar thing with ghosts and poltergeists and stuff. Like I don't believe in them, but I'm not going out there looking for 'em.
Oh,
If you get what I'm saying, I'm
I
not
get what you're
believing in them,
saying.
I'm
but like
not
I said,
saying there's poltergeist out there, but if there are, I'm not gonna go look for the poltergeist.
I'm gonna leave that alone. If somebody starts talking to me in my mother tongue in the woods, I'm not going out there exploring. I'm not
What if
going
they
out
need
there.
help, Raj? What if they need help and you're the only one that can reach them?
That's called natural selection. You shouldn't have been out there.
Dang.
It's just weird, man. It's so weird that we have national parks over these cave systems, and We let
Although,
people go there because if you don't let people go there, then they're definitely going to know something's up. But there is a lot of restricted area. There's a lot of rules at national parks, right? Don't go off the trail, yada yada. People go
well,
missing all the time. It's just strange. It's a lot of coincidences with that particular topic.
it is, but
That's
kind of where I fall on it though is people go missing because they're stupid. Um, and then the where I did while I do find it interesting and I love thinking about this, the cave system overlay with the national parks to me would just naturally occur anyway because one, these nature preserves and these national parks are the most majestic areas of our wilderness that we have in the United States that hasn't been populated basically by humans. They the cave systems are probably going to coincide with those like untouched wilderness areas, so to speak. When you develop land, you're not going to build your land on the rocky crags where caves would be found. They're not going to be in the areas that would be settled. And so naturally, you're probably going to preserve the areas that contain these diverse ecosystems, other with the caves and with the woodlands around them. When you talk about things like Yosemite with like the geysers and some of the things with the subterranean, like when you look at the geyser systems or whatnot, these caves are just going to be a naturally occurring part of that. And so while it's an interesting coincidence, I don't necessarily think that it's a causation.
No, it makes sense. And I mean, I can understand where Mike's coming from in terms of like they don't want people to know, so they're gonna just let them
Right.
explore a certain amount of it so they feel like they've seen everything. Something that's similar that I heard about recently was in Area 51, everyone thinks it's a UFO place and that everyone thinks that
Yeah.
there's aliens there. So during, I think it was World War II, there was a guy who started hearing weird signals coming from his ham radio. Because apparently during World War II, people were kind of going nuts with the ham radio, trying to play like homegrown spy and stuff and listen in on things that are going on. And he started hearing these weird sounds and weird things going on because part of the atomic project also consisted of working within Area 51 because it was like a secret base area. And instead of when he took that information, he's like, I heard some weird stuff and went to the freaking Air Force with it. Instead of telling him, no, you just listened into something that was, military based, don't worry about it, stop listening to it. They told him to keep digging. So they're like, oh man, you're onto something, keep digging. So this guy is going full blown into the freaking rabbit hole. Like everything is now UFOs to him, right? Everything is now, oh my God, this is I'm onto something. I'm onto something. And then all of a sudden, while he's getting that like all into what's happening right now, they're actually conducting atomic energy research without anybody even thinking about it. Nobody cares about that when everybody's hunting for UFOs. So
That's
it's
fair.
a the false
That is
flag
fair.
basically to just get people to think. I mean, it didn't end well for the guy. He was institutionalized for his delusions, and I think he died. But yeah, I mean, that's a great way to hide something. Don't tell people not to go somewhere. Just
Doing what he loved.
feed them into their fantasy, so that way they are so busy looking for that one fantasy that they miss everything else that's happening.
And that's fair too. I mean, everybody knows the whole human intuition. If you tell them not to press the red button, they're going to press it. So,
Oh, they're gonna smash that red button.
oh yeah, smash it hard.
I
So
just thought it
probably
was a
one of
cool thing.
the probably at least well probably the last one for me, the one that I came across that I actually didn't realize was a cryptid until now. So I thought it was just kind of a mythological creature and stuff like that. So ancient Egyptian culture, mythology, I find really fascinating. Kind of one that people don't talk about as much, at least mythology wise. We think of creatures from like ancient Greece and Rome and all that, but they have something called a serpopard, and it is applied by some modern researchers to what's described as a long-necked mythical animal from ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian depictions. They found images of this on ancient Egyptian artifacts, and it's been painted on the Narmer palette as well as the small palette of Nekhen. And so it's a cross between like a leopard and a serpent, supposedly.
It's a chimera.
And no, different. If you look up pictures of a serpopard, quite different. Um, So bearing the body of a leopard and the head of a snake on a long neck, although not entirely. Um, they kind
Oh,
of yeah, so they kind of describe it as a the Egyptians are well known for like accurate depictions of animals on their artifacts, which leads some archaeologists to think that this actually wasn't a mythical creature, but an extinct animal that existed during ancient Egyptian times.
a long neck
You know,
cheetah.
well,
Get
yeah,
out of here.
basically,
Come on.
yeah, it's basically a giraffe cat.
It's a
Um,
noodle neck. It's a noodle neck cat. Is
so I
basically what it
mean,
is.
so essentially the depictions of it they were used as more of a they believe it's kind of a heraldic beast, symbolizing royalty, protection, all that good stuff, religious concepts for uniting Upper and Lower Egypt.
You know what it could have been?
So,
It could have been a snake that still had vestigial legs that went extinct. Not that it was
hmm,
using the legs, but they were like maybe there, and maybe it wasn't very big, but maybe it moved really fast through the sand, well, it was a tropical desert back then, technically, wasn't it?
Ooh,
So
ooh, I've got a one. What if it was a leopard that had a caiman or a crocodile? Because they
in
hunt
its
caiman.
mouth,
Yeah,
could have been.
because nobody expects that, right?
oh,
Have you seen those videos in the Amazon? Leopards will just go into the water, grab a caiman, and drag it. And the way it drags it, it looks like it has a caiman tail if you're not used to seeing that all the time.
right.
And I mean, you look at a certain angle, you're just going to see a crocodile's head, and then you're going to see a leopard's body.
That's a fair
So
point.
Well, and I'm like, if there was any plausibility to this, which I don't think there is, I wouldn't picture it more so as like a snake's head on a leopard's body with a long neck. I mean, if you had a subspecies of a type of leopard or something like that that had a longer neck,
What
like
if it was a leopard running while a snake was trying to eat?
and that's the thing too, because like the noodle neck like would not have been a good
it's like,
like
please help me. And they're just like, no, snake demon.
yeah, the
Be
noodle neck
gone!
would not have been a good choice because I mean it would have been running and at full sprint that thing would have just snapped its own neck. But like you see this thing just
I'm
kind of
just seeing
flopping,
this
waddling
leopard
around.
running with a
Yeah,
snake. It's
just
Snake noose.
this
it's
this
like
neck,
it's
this
like a
this
scarf on it.
this neck just noodling around until it takes one wrong step and snap.
It's a strategy for the snake, man.
So
Like
I
there's
mean,
all
like
kinds of stuff. Like we talked about like in the Everglades, we have a smackdown going on between pythons and alligators, right? Like if you've never seen a python and alligator go after each other and you were in the water
Crazy.
and you see a python's head and an alligator's body all in one, you're gonna freak the fuck out. You're gonna be like, what is that? Like, what is happening? And you're gonna think of this as a mythical creature, the croco snake
yeah,
that
man, I'm
you
waiting
had.
for
Crocosnake.
Titanoboa at
Croco
this
snake.
point.
Crocosnake.
The croco snake.
Yeah, it's
What about a
interesting.
snakeadile?
Ooh, I like it. A lot of cryptids are just misidentified animals too, like we were talking about earlier. A good example is the stellar sea monkey. So
Hmm.
just like the stellar sea cow, right? Which is a manatee, is what we call it. A famous German zoologist that studied animals like Darwin and everything like that. Well, he was off the coast of an island, and in his book, he depicted an animal that had four flippers, a long crocodile-ish tail, um, and like a really weird head. And he actually drew everything post humanously. I don't know how to say it, but basically after he saw it, right? So he's going off of recollection, and it's interesting because a lot of people, the island that he's at, there's like a version of sea lions, and they think that he just misidentified a sea lion, which makes sense.
Oh yeah,
But
Snoop Lion.
but there is always the possibility that that was something that he actually saw, but it was so close to being extinct that by the time someone else went out to actually look for it, it had already died out.
Well, that's fair. And then you look at old sailing stories of mermaids. So one of the most common things was sailors reported finding mermaids, which would be considered a cryptid or a mythical creature at this point. And then the likely cause was these guys actually had syphilis, which was rotting their brains.
Yeah.
And so what they were doing is they were mistaken manatees as mermaids.
Which I don't know how the hell you would do that, because manatees
Syphilis,
are
bro.
ugly sons of bitches, man.
Syphilis, bro.
But syphilis is literally Swiss cheesing your brain. And apparently, according to a National Geographic documentary, I'm pretty sure it's National Geographic, might have been Discovery, that I watched back in the day on like, mythical animals or whatever, when they mistook the manatees for mermaids and they went to do the deed. Apparently, a manatee is the mammal with the closest anatomical structure to a human female.
I wish I never knew that.
You're welcome.
Why?
I wish I never knew that.
I have this draw now to Google.
No. The
Manatee.
FBI is watching.
Genitals.
You are going to be on so many types of lists that rarely do people find themselves
die
on.
tomorrow, Mike, I am not clearing your fucking history, okay? They're gonna have to find
Better
that
yet,
history.
I'm putting your history here. Eulogy.
Yes, I'd like to go over his last search.
Oh no! Oh!
Why did you look?
My God!
No.
To all the listeners, don't do it. Take my advice. It looks very similar.
So I'm watching this National Geographic or some kind of documentary on like possible mythical creatures, and they're like, yeah, so pretty much what happened was like sailors had syphilis, and so their brains were just melting away. So they're like, oh, this has got to be a mermaid, and they're like, well, that kind of helped to convince them.
I very few times in your life you learn something that you wish you never knew. This is one of those instances where my brain, I wish I had syphilis right now. Like, I don't want to. Oh God, those poor manatees.
I know.
No.
And there were probably so many back then.
Yeah, they weren't getting hit with like boat propellers like they are now.
Is that a problem?
Check out all the manatee we got running around here.
Oh, I can't even say that now. I can't even say that now. Oh God.
Did you ask if manatees getting hit by propellers was a problem?
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually
it's a huge problem.
Yeah, if you look at most manatees, like especially down in Florida and stuff like that, there are scars all over them because they'll be swimming along and literally the propellers from boat motors will cut them.
Is a manatee the same thing as a dugong?
A dugong is a Pokemon.
Is it? There's another name for a manatee that's similar.
Not that I'm aware. No, you're thinking of seal and sea lion.
Is that what it is? Is a dugong a Pokemon?
And if you look it up, it's 100% a Pokemon.
Oh God, maybe there's a little too much gin in my drink.
A dugong is essential.
So dugongs are based off of seals or sea lions. So yeah.
Okay.
A dugong is literally a white seal Pokemon with a unicorn horn, practically.
Oh, unicorns! Why would?
Dude, no, let's talk about animals. Well, we can talk about unicorns first, but we need to talk about animals that sound like they're cryptids and they're not.
This is true.
I don't even care about the unicorn anymore. What is it?
Yeah.
Like a narwhal?
Oh,
that's fair.
Yeah,
that sounds fake as hell, man.
That's the unicorn of the sea.
That is the unicorn of the sea. The narwhal, dude. Oh my God, aren't they like pretty close to being extinct? They were hunted for their thing for a while.
For their thing. Oh yeah.
Thing.
I don't know if they're like close to being extinct. They're a large porpoise, so there's not many of them. But I don't know if that means they're.
They also hang out exclusively in the Arctic.
So you know what they use that for, right?
Is it for mating? Like,
no,
or like
it's to corral fish. So in the water, when they're chasing a school of fish, they actually spin it around, and it forces the fish to kind of follow like a funnel, and then they can eat it.
What you're
What a
telling me
why
is a
does it have to be
narwhal
pointy
is
at
the
that point?
sheepdog of the sea.
Well, it's just a growth. It's just a keratinous growth. I can't think of.
That's a pretty majestic keratinous growth.
Can you think of a single horn that's not pointy at some point in the real world?
I don't know if there's because their purpose is generally for fighting for mating rights, so they have to be pointy.
Like you're talking about thinking of something like a horn that's not pointy.
Yeah, think of any horn that doesn't end in a point.
I
Do
mean,
deers point?
a lot of narwhal
Yep.
tusks aren't
Yeah.
very pointy, actually. Some are.
Like horns or growths of like that, they don't normally come out. I don't think there's any example that I can think of where they come out blocky. You know what I
No,
mean?
I mean
They,
even
Moose.
tusks are technically pointy.
Yeah.
They're meant
Moose.
to. They're weapons for these animals, so they have to use it. Like, so what does a sawfish use this little thing for?
it's actually got a bunch of electromagnetic sensors in there in
Mhm.
its nose. As far as the teeth are concerned, I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure I watched an episode or like a documentary that scientists aren't 100% sure either. They know
Okay.
that they know the nose has a lot of extra electromagnetic sensors, but they're not really sure why it has teethers.
Yeah.
Teethers. So
Well,
let,
and-
so are these like old sea tails?
Also,
So-
there is another one that sounds like it should be a cryptic, a sawtooth fish. If I told you there's a long-nosed fish with teeth on the end of it, you'd be like, "You're so full of shit. Get out of
Or
here."
Can we talk about the platypus?
Platypus, yes.
Platypus, yes.
That
Have you
thing
seen that? Oh
is
my
a
God.
duck beaver that has poisonous spurs on its back feet.
Did you
is
hear
like one
about-
of Hercules' lost trials.
Did you hear about when a British scientist sent a platypus back to England? And they were like, "You're so full of shit, this was taxidermized." They didn't even believe it when they saw it.
Yeah, because they're like, this is a what? Yeah, that's not real.
What is that bird? The really terrifying bird that I think it's a South American bird. Oh my God, I forget what it's called. It's literally terrifying. It has the most terrifying call I think I've ever heard. I gotta find it now.
So a lot of scientists believe that the sawtooth fish's sawed bill was made for self-defense, and the reason why it's where it is because a lot of fish eat their prey from the head down. So if you
Okay.
went to attack it, it's more likely that you would grab the bill, and also there's no way you're getting that whole ass bill down your gullet if you're a shark or something like that. You know what I mean? That would tear you
I
up.
guess, yeah, I guess it's like a defense, like, because I don't think they use it as like a it's more of a defense mechanism, I guess.
There also there's geological evidence of them existing since the late Cretaceous in the same form that they're in, just like sturgeon. That's crazy.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the sea that could be classified as a monster, like the anglerfish, an absolute nightmare fuel of a fish that's in the deep waters, dude. That's the craziest thing.
So do you know how anglerfish mate?
How?
This is that untapped knowledge, man.
This is going to be worse than the manatee, isn't it?
It's terrible, dude. So anglerfish, the ones that we see that we like are identifying as anglerfish, those are all females. Male
What?
angler. So a normal anglerfish, I believe, is about the size of my head, give or take,
Mhm.
right? A female. Males are about the size of like that. And a male, its only job is to literally find a female, attach himself to her in some way, shape, or form, and then he becomes a parasite. And he gives her sperm whenever she needs it. She sends out a chemical that makes him release sperm. His mouth, he bites out of the female, he fuses to her over time. He becomes a lump, loses his fins, everything. And he releases sperm whenever she decides he needs it.
So do they only need one male then for the time being, and then she can reproduce multiple times?
Pretty much, but scientists find anglerfish, female anglerfish, that have multiple males attached to them, and they're curious to know if she's able to control which one is releasing sperm, because that would be genetically valuable, right? So
Can
Yeah,
you
like a
have
genetic
anglerfish
advantage.
up in like an aquarium or something like that? Because they're deep water fish, right? So you have to have the pressure
yeah,
and
it's
everything for
only
them to
it's
survive.
after like tsunamis and stuff they find them, right? And they can figure out what a male and a female is because it's a different genetic makeup. They'll look at the bumps. The
Oh,
bump is
have you
pretty obvious.
usable? Have you seen an oarfish?
Oh, that shit is creepy too, man.
Sea monster, dude.
That's actually probably what sea monsters were based off of, were oarfish.
Like
Oh,
any
100%.
serpent sea monster, this thing is like 40 feet long. There's all kinds of dude. If there's anywhere that a cryptid could be found, I think it's going to be in the ocean, not on terrestrial land. It's going to be in the ocean, and it's only going to be a cryptid because we've never come across it. Have you seen the video from the oil drilling
Hmm.
place where they had this giant, like it was not exactly an octopus, but it was more of a like a jellyfish that's tendrils went like all the way down past where the camera could see. So it was like 40 feet tendrils. Like it
Yeah.
had these like weird like crustacean style arms on it. Like, oh my god, dude.
Well, because there is a large jellyfish known as a man of war.
That's just a large in size though. It doesn't get very long or
Right.
anything like that. Yeah. So jellyfish are terrifying to me because you'll never see them until it's too late.
So I can't remember what it's called, and I was just trying to look it up, but I can't find it. So there's the oarfish, right? There's also a type of jellyfish, and they cluster into a long like ribbon, uh, and all their tentacles hang down, and they do it because you're more likely to catch something if you're basically casting a net, right? So if you're a long ribbon, and yeah, they'll stay together, and they found them to be like 20-40 feet long. Of these, they're individual jellyfish. They're not very big, but they glue themselves together basically, and that could be another thing that you would see and be like, that's a sea monster, like a sea serpent, you know what I mean?
There's a lot of stuff in the ocean that could be like, I doubt they came into contact with like anglerfish, like oarfish probably because they do tend to surface once in a while.
Yeah, I think it's for
Um,
breeding they do
for
that.
breeding, they come back up. But like even something like a sperm whale, right? A sperm whale is a gigantic animal with teeth, and if it wants to, it will fuck you up. So you literally are faced off with these animals, and things like when you come across the giant squid, you
Oh
realize,
yeah.
yeah, you understand what a kraken is when you see what a giant squid can be. And all the specimens that we have are technically smaller iterations of what it could be at full size, which is a squid with the eye the size of a plate, like a normal dinner plate, and then tendrils that'll go off for 40 feet. So if you their suction cups are basically, imagine you have like just a glass. Each one of those suction clubs is just a glass, and it just gets onto you, and each one of those has their own set of things that'll inject into you. Like, no,
it
absolute terror.
it's crazy that we knew of the existence of giant squid and colossal squid before we actually even really saw one, and it was just because we looked at dead, like, uh, whale bodies, and we saw the suction cups, and we knew that that's what they were eating, was squid. um, but we were like, that ain't we're gonna need a bigger boat.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Get the
need
bigger boat, Johnny.
yeah, no, that ain't no regular squid. Like even like small size squid can take a chunk out of you. Have you seen those, like the Japanese, they hunt for these red squid?
Yeah, those are pretty big
Yeah,
actually.
man,
Yeah,
those are pretty big.
they're about like yay big, but they will take a chunk out of you if you're not careful. The hooks that they use for catching squid is basically just barbed wire wrapped around a single piece of metal, and they're just hoping to snatch anything that comes close to it.
So I got a crazy story. I was watching one of those like medical shows one time, And people fish for squid in the U.S. There's certain areas that you can catch them. This guy had that squid lure that you're talking about, right? Um, he went back to cast, and that lure went down somebody's throat. What I mean, this is like the only time this has ever happened, but it actually happened. There's X-rays and everything.
So that's just
My
death
God.
then. Like,
I don't remember if the guy survived or not, but
how do
I
you survive?
remember.
It went down your throat. It's big enough to where it lodges. You can't breathe. You can't pull it out because all the barbs are facing upward. Like,
I can't even imagine. Ugh.
no, no. Put me in the Iron Maiden any day. I don't want anything to do with that.
Yep.
Jesus Christ,
It
dude.
goes down, but it doesn't come back up.
Which I was actually
Never.
watching a little documentary on torture, speaking of Iron Maiden, and it actually wasn't something that immediately killed you. What got you is when you started to get fatigued and you leaned forward or back. That's when like you would start to get impaled. Like there was enough space that it was only going to slightly pierce you.
I'm assuming you died from infection before you died from the actual.
Oh no, you died from bleeding out.
Oh, did you? Was it sharp enough to actually impale you?
Yeah, to a point because people would get fatigued. There was only a little bit of room side to side that you could lean and move. But the rest of it, like if you started to slump down, like you're getting impaled.
Hmm.
But speaking more of the cryptids, two of the animals that I found that I like you would think would be cryptids but are not. One is a jerboas.
A
Uh,
what?
it's a jerboas, and basically it's a tiny little kangaroo bunny mouse,
I've seen those.
and
They're
it's
fucking
adorable.
adorable.
It takes
They're
dust baths like a
adorable.
chinchilla. But then
The
the other one that I would 100% be convinced it was a cryptid if I wasn't literally looking at a picture of one is a saber-toothed deer.
Yes, that's in. Is that in India
yeah, we
or
have those.
Mongolia or something like that?
We have
Yeah.
those in Asia. Yep.
Yeah, man, saber-toothed deer. This thing looks like it should be a cryptid. This thing is a straight up normal animal.
Look up a shoebill stork.
Oh yeah.
It's the
I'm
Those
most
things
also
are.
looking at one
terrifying.
of those.
They're
They are
aggressive
terrifying.
too. Yeah. They will.
They are terrifying, dude. You look at them one straight up, it just looks like it's just waiting. It's the most predatory looking bird I think I've ever seen, and it's a stork. And it has this call that is so terrifying that it sent chills down my spine. Like I couldn't. Oh my god, the shoebill stork is definitely one of those animals that I don't want anything to do with.
So another one of the animals that I found that's another type of bird that looks literally like it came out of the dinosaur era. They live in the African grasslands is a secretary bird.
Oh man. Those things are aggressive too.
This thing looks like it will mess your day up.
It would. It messes snake days like cobras. It attacks cobras or some of the bigger snakes in the Sahara or whatever. I don't know. But I've seen them. They stomp them out, man. They don't
Bro, that is
they
a
don't care.
fancy freaking bird, dude. That's like the royalty of birds. Jesus Christ. Like it's either that or the peacock. I don't know which one because like it's got a literal crown on its head. Like there's just some animals out there that just punch above their weight class, and that's just what they do. Like a mongoose, it actively hunts cobras.
Oh yeah, dude.
It does not give a fuck. It's like a mongoose and a honey badger, dude. If they ever mated to create a super badger, fuck. That would be horrible for us. And we see them all the time in South India because they're always out hunting for snakes. And we just leave them be because they do not care about how big you are. They don't care about what kind of threat you could be. They'll just charge at you.
Just call it a honey goose.
My honey goose, no.
A honey goose.
Trying to think of other things that seem like they shouldn't exist. Okapi is kind of weird. Like a zebra giraffe in Africa. That was a weird one.
I
What about
mean,
a
in all
liger?
mm,
Is the liger a man-made cryptid?
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty
yeah.
much.
I mean, in all reality, something that probably you think shouldn't be a real thing is a Komodo dragon.
Yeah, biggest lizard in the world, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty strange. and scary to think about.
Yeah,
And
and it's
recently, you know how they used to say that the saliva wasn't like venomous or anything; it was just nasty because they eat
All the bacteria.
meat. Yeah, now they're saying it might actually be a venom or a toxin that they excrete.
Oh God.
That's even scarier now.
oh, have you guys ever heard of Snake Island?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my god.
That is a place I never intend to go.
I don't even know why people want to go there.
There's
I
a
watched,
lighthouse there that's
yeah, I watched
necessary.
those guys that went hiking, and I mean, every 5, 6 steps, bro, there's a
Yeah.
snake. Snake, snake, snake.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
at
that's
a
the
point,
thing.
the snakes have to be cannibalizing each other, right?
Probably. I don't know if there's
Yeah.
any really birds left or anything. They got to be eating them all.
And that's the thing. Like when people are like, you know what, let's go to explore Snake Island. First of all, why? You know it's there. Like you're not proving anything that hey, I hiked Snake Island. It's like, no, you went and walked around with a bunch of snakes left and right, and you're lucky you're not dead.
No, you don't.
Oh
Nobody
man.
willingly goes there. Like, like there's certain stuff that just shouldn't exist, like the blobfish.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, how weird is that?
What
Actually,
a weird fucking animal.
so that animal does look a lot different when it's actually at the like depth that it's supposed to be. It looks
Oh,
like
Mhm.
that
really?
because it's all bloated and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a
Now,
weird
kind of
looking
tying
animal.
into our episode, not today, Satan, would you rather be on Snake Island or would you rather be on the island of the dolls in Mexico?
Dolls
Have you guys
any
seen
day.
pictures of that?
Yeah, I'd take the dolls.
Have you seen pictures of that place?
Yeah, yeah, I saw a video of those guys that went there.
Oh
I
yeah.
think some dudes from BuzzFeed went to the doll place, and it was like, yeah, it's kind of creepy, but worst case scenario, I have to fight off some poltergeist, but I'm not fighting snakes, bro.
Yeah,
I've
pretty
seen
much.
snakes on a plane, never ends well. Unless you're Samuel L. Jackson, it's not going to end well for you.
Well, there's plenty of cryptids out there. There's literally hundreds, like going from every state in the US to every country in the world. And yeah, I don't really have too many more.
No, it's like what I'd like to talk about more than the cryptids is so yeah, not more than the cryptids because this whole episode's about cryptids. Like we know there's cryptids out there that people will propagate and stuff like that and will come into being, but what do you think is the core purpose? Like nobody thought of a cryptid because they wanted to make money off of it at first. It was just an opportunity. Do you think it's just people being that dumb, like looking at something without investigating further?
I think certain ones are. I think other ones come from actual folklore or like the natives talking about something that has been passed down for generations. Like I was saying, I think a fair amount of cryptids were probably extinct animals that we just will never know or even there at the time. Um, Also, you know, we talked about like the folklore with the Wendigo and stuff. Their stories made up so people will be better people, right? Um, but I think things like the Mothman, I think those are just tall tales that I think someone actually did just either make it up or they felt like that is what they saw. And then people were like, well, I'm going to get behind this guy because he's never lied before. And then it takes off from there, you know?
Yeah, I think especially with Mothman and stuff, when you look into it a little bit more, like, so one of the things that was like, oh, red eyes, like what would have red eyes? When they look at it, like owls, like especially, I think it's like the big horn owl, which is like the biggest owl species in North America, like
Great horned owl, but yeah.
great horn, yeah, great horn owl. Like when you shine a light on their eyes are red. So I mean, it makes sense. All of this stuff, like we're not here to destroy your guys's pleasure into looking at cryptids and belief in cryptids. We just want to give you some plausible answers on why we think it's bullshit and why
Well,
and that's just the way it is. Like
and it's a myriad of things. It's like it could be stemming from ancient traditions passed down orally from like Native Americans, cultures that use them to explain things. Like I said, it's kind of a really, really fine line between cryptids and mythology sometimes, or a mythical creature, or sometimes, I mean, people are fascinated by the occult, the unexplainable, things that go bump in the night. Like we just have this innate morbid curiosity that I think fuels some of this, that people would have just kind of come up with these stories or these ideas anyway. But then also just events that people couldn't explain, whether it's a natural event, or one of the ones that popped into my mind while we were talking was in France. I don't know if you ever heard the story of La Bête de Gévaudan, which is essentially the tale of the beast of Gévaudan.
Blah 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 blah
Yeah,
blah.
it's French.
We don't trust anything that the French say.
That's fair. I'm French. I'm
It
hurt.
sounded like you were talking with Dracula teeth when you said that.
So my French pronunciation probably is not very good, but it essentially translates to the Beast of Gévaudan, which was a town in France, and essentially, I don't remember all the fine details of it, but there was a either a girl or a series of like young girls or children that were they went out of the woods, they were like murdered, or they found their bodies massacred, and they were just mauled, mutilated, and rather than thinking that it was somebody that went and attacked them or abducted them, it was attributed to what they called the beast of the woods in Gévaudan, which is it took many forms of like a really large wolf type creature, like larger than a wolf, larger than a dire wolf. um it could have been a dire wolf. It took place so long ago, it could have been. But also too, it's like it's that story then takes on the form of, well, maybe it was a werewolf or some type of monster like that, and it's been used not frequently, but in some popular culture, that story. So tragedies happen, events happen, and these stories just kind of spur on from there. People claimed back then that they had killed the beast and had brought it to the town, and the attacks stopped. But
I don't
I
know
don't
how
know
much
that
I
they actually really
trust.
confirmed that.
Yeah, I don't know how much I trust people from back in the day because they ate moldy bread.
That's fair.
That's
On
true.
the usual, on the
Very true.
usual. So there's a lot of early society that was just high on hallucinogens from all the mold they were eating from their bread
Yeah,
before they
man.
understood. So,
Yeah, and then
but
syphilis and mermaids.
so don't bring that up, please. Never bring that up again. I don't ever want to hear about it.
I'm
Fuck
scarred.
those dudes and what they're doing. But as a segue to that, so that we base all these cryptids on old folk tales and stuff that have come in. How about the new stuff that comes into play? So recently we've dealt with Slender Man, and it's something that I want to talk about is when does it become a cryptid versus when is it just a folk tale?
Or Siren
Because
Head.
oh yes, yeah, there's all kinds of new ones that are coming out that people believe in. I mean, two girls tried to kill their friend over Slender Man, and it was kind of bananas, but that did happen in real. That's something that we had happen in the real world, not in a movie. So, like,
Well,
is Slender Man a cryptid?
well, I would say that like we were talking a little bit before the podcast today that at least in my opinion, um, all cryptids are a form of an urban legend or some type of legend, whereas not all urban legends are cryptids. And then it's finding that line of differentiation in between the two. So for me, a cryptid, most of them you think it could be a humanoid type deal, but usually it's very animalistic, or it's even if it's bipedal, it has very animal nature to it. Slender Man is more of a, whether people describe it as a paranormal entity or like an extraplanar entity, the Slender Man. And then, if I'm not mistaken, those legends and things didn't really start coming around until people started playing the Slender Man game. Like, if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of what started everything. Siren Head, a little bit different story. I don't know too much about Siren Head, so one of you guys can take that one. But um, to me, they're stories that start out from pop culture, at least in our day and age now. They kind of take on a life of their own. Of, oh well, it could be an urban legend of Slender Man's real or something like that. But to me, cryptid, especially because the study would be a cryptozoology, like the zoology part to me, I don't know. At least when I think of a cryptid, it's a type of like an animal or an animalistic type of creature, um, less of a humanoid type
So
creature.
in that sense, then are aliens considered cryptids or are they folktale?
No, I wouldn't consider aliens a cryptid. I mean, I would consider them like a phenomenon. A lot of people actually throw them in with paranormal, just of things that they can't explain. Um, just like there's debate on whether like a banshee would be considered a cryptid or not. And it's described as a wailing woman. There's also the story of like La Llorona in Mexico, which is another wailing woman story, like a banshee, more of a paranormal story. So, I mean, there's a it's really hard to differentiate, but I would say that the general trend we see is it's more of a creature basis for like a more animalistic style creature to be defined as a cryptid.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense because we deal with stuff that like it's on the edge of fantasy with this kind of genre versus what's actually plausible in real life. Like people talk
Yeah,
about werewolves and stuff, and werewolves as a basis seems ridiculous, but then you watch videos of people with rabies and you
Yep.
understand that hey, this could be not a hairy person transforming into a wolf as much as somebody turning more into a dog or more into some rabid animal that would attack anything that it feels threatened
right.
by or wants to. So
The
there's
only hole in that plot hole is people that have rabies have an extreme thirst, so they go to water, yet water is supposed to be like the antithesis to werewolves.
no, they don't go to water. Rabies hate water. The rabies virus hates, so when people get rabies, they actually don't, they hate water. They have a fear of water that comes over them.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. I'm thinking of
Yeah.
EHD. EHD, the deer go to water.
Yeah, yeah. So rabies is a
Yeah.
weird disease where it's just you hate water, you just your body almost rejects it and it becomes something that they don't want. And it's a weird little side effect. I don't know if it has to do with how the virus actually procreates in the system, but just the idea of a virus in your body then takes control of almost like a zombie, like it takes control of what your wants, needs, and everything's are, and then you're now no longer in control.
Well,
And
it's because the virus attacks the brain, attacks the mind, and so like a lot of other organic mental disorders, your mental state starts to change over time because of that deterioration.
yeah, no, absolutely. Do you guys have anything to add to our cryptid debate? I
I
think
do
we
not.
I think we actually definitely talked a lot about some of our favorites. And if you guys listening have any favorites that we didn't talk about and you'd like us to talk about, we'll definitely do a part two. There's a lot to talk about with this subject, and if there's anything that we missed or any inaccuracies we had in our conversations about these cryptids, we don't care. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, just let us know via email.
Mothman
Let us know.
2022.
Yeah, these guys are all hide and seek champions for 2022, and they've all been awarded their individual prices when they come to eventually collect them, which I doubt that they ever will. So, also in talking about redaction of information, I wanted to talk to you guys about last episode that we had regarding Ukraine. There's a couple things that going back I wanted to redact and just clarify. Several times during that podcast, we did make mistakes in how we identified UN versus NATO. So I wanted us to be very clear that UN and NATO are separate entities. And one of the things that we talked about is the Russian vote in NATO. Russia actually has no vote in NATO. Russia only has a vote in the UN.
Right.
So, in terms of NATO decision, Russia doesn't get to make any of those decisions. So, I want to make sure that's clear and that's redacted. Um, and that also some of the mistakes that we made is we misstated the agreement that was made for the expansion of NATO. NATO expansion didn't start until after the USSR fell in 1991. This was not a World War II agreement. This was a 1990s agreement that was made. So, less than 30 years ago. So, that's my redaction stuff that I figured out when I was listening to the podcast and just taking notes for myself to see if there's anything that needs to be corrected. So take it away.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to Drunk with Questions. We are on the road to 1,000 listeners and 100 Podbean followers. I'm sure plenty of you listen to us religiously but aren't necessarily following us, so please ensure that you do that. Like always, spread this to everyone, your mom, dad, work friends, people that you hate. That'd be fun. You know,
Send this to your haters.
yes, just get us out there. The more clout that we get, the more that we're going to be able to do. Other than that, I think I just want to say thank you for all the support. And as always, stay ordinary, my friends.